Hey everyone, it's Crystal and welcome back to the channel. So, I finally accumulated a decent amount of books to talk about over the past 3 months. Again, I've just been in a reading slump and I hadn't really read that many books that I wanted to talk about, but finally, in May, I actually read, how many? 5 books, and there were books that I enjoyed reading, so I now have something to talk about. But basically this video is just the books that I've been reading recently over March, April and May. That's pretty much it. Okay, so starting off with March, I read 2 books in March. The first of which being The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. I have a whole reading blog on this book, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but basically we're following the events of The Stolen Heir, except this book we are in Oak's point of view, the first book we're in Ren or Surin's point of view. Basically we start off with Oak being imprisoned in Ren's kingdom and he has to struggle between remaining loyal to his family and ending Ren and her kingdom and whatever, or try and get Ren to trust him again because he loves her and sort of find a happy ending for everyone. He's also discovering whether or not he's actually a good person. But yeah, Oak sort of has to figure out how to navigate a war in which he can save everyone he loves. I mean, the only thing I can say is that I love Holly Black. Anything she writes, I'm just gonna eat it up, especially if it's set in this world, especially if we get a cameo from Jude and Carden and let me not get hung up on Jude and Carden for one video. I really enjoyed reading this. I loved reading about Jude's family from a different point of view. Their family tree to begin with is so complicated and messy, but then you add in all the different dynamics between each of the family members and it's just it's crazy. And it was really interesting to me to see Oak's perspective on their family and how he interprets all the relationships, how he views his sisters, what his relationship is like with Matic now that he's grown up, and even with Ariana. But yeah, it was just fun to me to see him all grown up and see their family dynamic from a different perspective. I gave this 5 stars. At the moment, I'd probably put it at a 4.5 because I'm definitely not as attached to Oak and Surin as I am Jude and Carden, but I still love this world. I loved Oak as the narrator and I really enjoyed his character arc. But yeah, you can see more of my opinion in my reading blog. So that was the first book of March. Great start to the month. I really enjoyed this book. And the next book I read was Spellslinger. Now I was just looking at my library and I was just trying to find a book that I hadn't heard of before. I was just in the mood for something new and completely unknown to me. This book follows Kellen and he is about to turn 16 and he is about to go through his mage's trials, except in the past few years his magic has been slowly waning and at this point he basically has no magic at all. And if you can't pass your mage's trials or if you don't have magic, then you become a slave, which obviously he doesn't want to become a slave. So in order to pass his mage's trials, he works up some little plan that will get him in without having to use his magic because he's supposed to be this super smart, cunning kid. So he basically tricks his way into passing his mage's trials. Also, if he becomes a slave, he is disgraced by his town. He's no longer respected. I think it also maybe has a reflection on their family. And then this stranger comes to town and introduces Kellen to a new world. Not really, but a new way of thinking, a new way of life. So he has to sort of figure out how he feels about things. The first chapter was really strong. Kellen was sarcastic and funny and the voice really reminded me of Percy Jackson. I love Percy Jackson and I love a funny narrator. Yeah, make me laugh when you're going through these ridiculous situations. The magic intrigued me. I thought it was fun that we were following a character that didn't have magic in a world of magic. After the first chapter though, I felt it just immediately fell off. I felt the humor in the writing was way less prominent than it was in the first chapter. The world just didn't really intrigue me. I felt the magic system was not that well thought out. And then I also started realizing that I didn't like any of the characters. Kellen, initially I liked him, but then he started doing some stuff and I was bro, we're not here for that. The stranger that comes to town, initially she was fun. She's probably my favorite character out of them all, I don't know. But she also did some stuff. And then everyone else were just crappy people. And not in the way of the fun, morally grey characters that are just awful people and it's fun to read about. They were just all doing mean things to each other for no reason, and I didn't vibe with it. His sister and his friends were so annoying. I couldn't stand them. And also with the overall writing, I felt like specifically Kellen's character arc just fell flat for me. There were a lot of places where he should have grown as a character and like slowly been changing his views and understanding of the world, but it just like didn't happen. It's a series, so maybe he grows later on in the books, but I feel like that stuff should have started having some little like seedlings of growth and change in his character, and I just felt like he stayed very static. Also, there was this whole weird thing at the end of the book, this weird discovery. I mean, it's vaguely a spoiler, so like skip ahead a few minutes if you don't want any spoilers. We find out that there was a genocide. Like the end, like I can't quite remember what happened, but I'm pretty sure that the people who were oppressed and like slaughtered turned out to also be bad people and also wanted to colonize like other people. And it just felt like the end of the book was like, everyone's bad, everyone wants to colonize everyone, because there was also like some other people that were trying to anyway, just put like a bit of a bad taste in my mouth, because I felt like, I don't know if there was supposed to be a message there or what, but it didn't come off very well. Overall, like, it was just a bit undercooked for me, and it needed to reevaluate its themes and messages that it was sending. Yeah, I rated this 2.75. It might get way better as the series goes on, but the first book was not for me. Yeah, that took me a long time to get through because I didn't really enjoy it. Yeah, not a great end to March. Now in April, my sister and I started a book club because she wants to get into reading a bit more, and her first pick was Fourth Wing. Now, I was very hesitant to read this. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Why did you pick Fourth Wing? Because I'd seen so many mixed reviews online about this book, but I actually ended up loving this. It shouldn't be that surprising because it's got dragons, it's got a dragon school, it's got enemies to lovers, there's magic, it's everything that I love in a book. So, I mean, the chances of me liking it were very high. So Violet has been training to be a scribe her whole life, which is like, she works in a library and like they record documents and keep track of all the books and like historical documents. She has, I'm pretty sure it's an autoimmune disease, but basically like her bones and limbs are very fragile and she can break or dislocate bones and muscles very easily. But her mum is like a war general and forces her into joining the Rider Squadron. To become a rider, you obviously have to bond with a dragon, and they are very, very tough creatures. Like, they will not accept a weak rider. So basically she's screwed, because most likely the dragons will interpret her frail body as a weakness and not want to bond with her. And if she doesn't bond, then she's not a rider and she will most likely die. Super fun time, super great time, loving it. So she basically has to use the skills that she has from training to be a scribe and apply them to surviving the Dragon College. Not only that, because her mum is a war general, she is a target for the children of the rebels who were all murdered. So yeah, she has a lot of things fighting against her. But yeah, she has to navigate her way through this college. Now, I did love this. However, I don't really understand why it got so hyped, because I don't feel like it really does anything new. Like, I've seen the dragon bonding thing before, even though those moments were probably some of my favorite parts of the book. I don't understand why it got so hyped, and that's not to say it's a bad book, because like, I liked it. I just think that like, it doesn't really bring anything new to the table. But at the same time, I did have a theory that it sort of had the ACOTAR effect, where like all the romance readers read this and got introduced to fantasy, so then like fantasy went on to like the romance side of BookTok and all that. But yeah, I think it was just a digestible read for like people that are new to fantasy, which is great because expanding horizons, we love that. Plus the romance is like a big part of the book. I do, however, feel like there was way too many characters. Like, I had no idea who was who except for like 3 or 4 characters for so much of this book. Like, I just started being able to differentiate Violet's friends at like the very end of the book. So I was like a fully obsessed, entirely immersed in this book while I was reading it, but I did find once I put it down, I didn't really think about it that much afterwards, and I think partly is due to me not becoming attached to the characters. Now the romance. It was fun. It was like, okay, it really bordered and sometimes crossed the line of being cringy in a lot of places, which maybe it was intentionally written that way. If so, that's fine, like it's fun to read, but I wasn't really like hardcore invested in them because, like, one, a little bit cringy, two, I felt the enemies to lovers, but I didn't really feel the enemies to lovers. Like they didn't quite enemies to lovers the way I like my characters to enemies to lovers. You could sort of tell from the get-go that Xaden was a bit smitten with Violet, and oh my god, the countless descriptions and comments about how hot Xaden was, and I was like, Violet, I swear to god, if you don't stop right now. I understand, I get it, he's hot, okay? Everyone knows. We understand. Anyway, it was fun, a little bit cringy. Oh my god. Also, how are these guys staying on their dragons without saddles? It is like looked down upon for Violet to have a saddle, for her to be holding on to her dragon like she would dislocate her shoulders. So like she can't grip on just with her body, she has to have a saddle. But there is no way that these other people, while their dragons are flying at like top speed way up in the sky, like just the wind alone throw you off your dragon if you didn't have something attaching you to them, or like something to grab onto. They're staying on while their dragons are doing like crazy like fighting maneuvers. Their dragons don't catch them. I understand that these dragons would not want to be saddled because they're not exactly friendly dragons. Anyway, and like their slippery dragon scales. I was getting annoyed at that because I just didn't I could not comprehend how these guys are staying on. Anyway, I rated it 4.2 star. Why can I not say this? I rated it 4.25 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's a solid read. The whole rant about the dragon staying on really got me amped up. Okay, next book. I listened to an audiobook. It was a book that was recommended to me by a friend. I really wanted to like it. I had it saved in my Spotify library for like a long time, and then I finally decided to listen to it in like February or March. I don't remember when I started it. And it took me so long to get through it because I just couldn't get into this book. The book is Wings by April N. Pike. Basically, we follow this girl, Laurel. She moves town, she starts going to high school, she was homeschooled before. Things start happening and she ends up growing wings out of her back. And she eventually discovers that she's a fairy. Just like, first and foremost, I don't think I'm the age group this book is intended for. I think it's more like preteen, middle grade sort of age, but also the characters are like 16 or something like that, so it reads like a middle grade book, so I'm assuming that's the intended audience. And I don't think all middle grade books or younger books have to also be accessible for older audiences to enjoy, but I do think it's the mark of a good middle grade book that older people can read it and still get some enrichment out of it. And I just didn't think that was the case with this book. The characters and the storyline just fell very flat, like there was no depth to the story, in emotion, in themes, in anything. I also found that like the writing, I could tell the writing sounded young just from listening to the audiobook, but also the narrator for the audiobook made the characters sound really whiny. It wasn't so bad that I like couldn't listen to it, but it made me not like it as much. There was no plot. Like, it's literally just Laurel discovering that she's a fairy, but like nothing happens until like the very last bit of the book where like a bunch of things happen. All the rest of the book is just conversations, mainly between Laurel and her friend David. Nothing else happens. And back to the characters being like lacking depth. They were so bland. Laurel especially, incredibly bland. And I understand that this was part of her being a fairy, but like there's a big emphasis on her not eating, or like eating very little and just eating like salads or a bit of fruit, and being like stunningly gorgeous. Like this girl is like prettier than supermodels, doesn't get pimples, she hasn't had a period, and like that's all to do with her being a fairy. But if this book is targeted at younger kids who are gonna want to be fairies. Like, I just feel like that was a weird thing to include and especially like emphasize on. Like, there's so many conversations about how she doesn't eat normally and she just had absolutely zero personality. And the love interest, David, who's like also her friend, he really, I feel like he kind of only liked Laurel because she was like absolutely drop dead gorgeous. But then at the same time, he's also probably my favorite character out of everyone because he actually had some interests and like personality. Oh, and then there was Tamani. He's this fairy that Laurel ends up meeting, and he's supposed to be like funny and flirtatious and charming. He just creeped me out every single time he opened his mouth. Like, I did not enjoy any of the scenes that they had together. Any of the scenes he was in, I was like, no, you're weird, I don't like you, stop talking. In a different story with better development, I could absolutely get behind Tamani and his whole story with his and Laurel's backstory, but in this, I just couldn't stand him. I think this story would be fine for preteens, like, they're not looking for depth in a story, but yeah, as an older reader reading this, it just had no value for me. Yeah, this is a 2.5 stars, but I'm not gonna lie, it's probably just a 2. Sorry, Lauren, love you. Moving on. Now we are on to May. May was a fantastic, May was my best reading month so far this year. Most of them I really enjoyed. They were pretty much all good books. A solid month. So the first book I read was This Time It's Real by Anne Lang. I was in the mood for like a light, fluffy romance. Knew I liked If You Could See the Sun, so I was like, let's just try this one. 10 out of 10. I loved this. This was a super solid young adult romance. It was cute, it was fluffy. Let me tell you what it's actually about. I also vlogged me reading this in my most recent video. I have a bit more detail on my experience there, but basically we follow Eliza. Her mum works in a high up position in her job. That means she has to like move to a different city or different country like every single year. And growing up, Eliza has really struggled with keeping friends because they move so often. She has one friend that has stayed in touch with her over the years, but other than that, like, she doesn't make new friends when she goes to a new school. At her new school, she has to write a personal essay, and because she has trouble opening up to people and this essay has to be posted on like their school forum, which is public, she doesn't want to write about any real life personal issues. So she decides to write a fake essay about a fake boyfriend, and overnight it ends up going viral. And because of this, she gets an offer from like her favorite journalism website to become an intern. And obviously she wants this position, so she hires Kaz Song, who is an actor in her year level at school, to be her fake boyfriend, to keep up the ruse of the story that she's fabricated. The fake feelings turn to real feelings and drama ensues. This was just like perfect, fluffy romance. I got everything out of it that I needed to get out of it. Anne Lang is also like fantastic at making you care for the characters as soon as you start reading about them. Plus, this situation is just like so ridiculous. It's just fun, it's drama, it's silly. I loved Eliza and Kaz, their relationship was very sweet. And again, I loved their characters like individually. I just really enjoyed this. Perfect fluffy rom-com, brilliant writing, fun characters, silly, ridiculous, fun situation. Great book, yeah. I loved it. What did I rate it? I gave it 4 stars. It was just good. If you're looking for a fluffy YA rom-com to lift your spirits, then like this is the book for you. Next book, I wanted basically the same thing as This Time It's Real. I was just really in the mood for like fluffy, light-hearted romance. So I read Not Here to Be Liked by Michelle Quach. Also, funny coincidence, I was looking for a similar book and both the main characters' names are Eliza. So Not Here to Be Liked, we follow Eliza. She is managing editor of her school's newspaper, The Bugle, and she loves her work. She is fully 100% committed to her job, and she wants to become the editor-in-chief, and no one is running against her, so she thinks she has this in the bag. And then like the day before the vote, this guy, Len, who has been in the newspaper for I think a year, barely participates in it. He's this washed up baseball prodigy. He decides that he's going to run. Eliza is annoyed, but she's not concerned because she is clearly the better candidate. Shock horror, Len gets voted as editor-in-chief. Eliza is livid. So she writes this little vent piece on one of their school's computers. She basically blames Len's winning of the vote on sexism because he's a charming guy. Someone ends up publishing her vent piece that she wrote purely for herself, and it prompts this conversation of feminism and sexism and misogyny within their school, whether or not their school is affected by it. Things happen. Overall, I really did enjoy this book. It was fun. I liked the conversation of feminism. I think it was written very well in a way that is digestible, and I think it would be a great book for like preteens or like early teenagers to introduce them to these topics. Generally, the topics that were brought up were great, and I think they were spoken about well. However, Eliza needed to grow as a feminist throughout this book, because she starts off as like the stereotypical negative idea of a feminist. She doesn't like boys, she hates makeup, she hates fashion, she hates girls that do partake in that sort of thing. She is all about work and achievement, and she's kind of rude, and it would have been fine to have her like that, but she really needed to grow over the course of the book and realize that that is not actually what feminism is. She starts obsessing over the guy, she starts putting a little bit more effort into her appearance, and she calls out her hypocrisy, but she doesn't ever have that character growth of like, it's not a bad thing that I'm doing this. So the romance was fun. I wouldn't, however, read this book if you just want a romance, because it was definitely a side plot compared to like the talk of feminism. I did enjoy the romance, and I did enjoy this book overall. That was just like a little bit of a little thing for me. But if you're looking for like a fluffy romance book that has a bit more substance in the content, then this is a good book, especially for younger people, I think. Not here to be liked. Okay. And then I read this ginormous mammoth of a book. Because we read Fourth Wing for our first book club book, we continued with Iron Flame the next month. Again, I was scared to start this book because I had also seen people online saying that they didn't like this book as much as they liked Fourth Wing. I was like, oh, she dropped the ball on the plot, like it's not as good, the story fell flat, something like that. I can't really explain what this book is about without spoiling, so it's just continuing on from the events of Fourth Wing. There's a war happening, stuff is going on. I said before that I didn't really think about Fourth Wing that much once I put it down, but as soon as I picked this book up and started reading, I was like so excited to be back in this world. I was reading it like every second of every day. I really enjoyed most of this book. I think she did a great job at continuing the storyline. There was a lot more political intrigue in this book, which I always enjoy reading. I feel like there was a bit more going on in this book compared to Fourth Wing. The plot was just like so much more juicier, which I enjoyed. Also, I came to the realization reading Iron Flame that like these books are unironically hilarious. But then that brings us to Violet and Xaden. Oh my god. They were so annoying in this book. I'm not holding this thing up the whole time. To begin with, Violet is mad at Xaden for something that happened in Fourth Wing, and her reasoning for it is so beyond stupid. She is supposed to be this incredibly intelligent individual, and yet she cannot understand that during a war, when there are literal mind readers around, you cannot tell every single person about every detail of your war effort. That's just stupid. By not telling her when she is a literal target, it is being a smart war leader to keep that from her. Xaden not telling her all the details of their plan has nothing to do with their relationship. It is simply, like I said, being a good war leader. Not even a good war leader, just like a slightly competent one. I really appreciated in Fourth Wing that we're told that she's a super smart person, and then she actually proves it throughout Fourth Wing by using her brain and her wits to get her through these challenges that she can't do purely through strength like the other people can. But in this book she was so dumb. So dumb. Like, use just a little bit of common sense. Just a little. Ugh. So I was really annoyed with Violet for just being like straight up dumb when it came to that whole argument. But then you also have Xaden and his stupid questions. Oh my god. Let me slap this man. Again, I understand why he can't tell her everything that's going on in terms of the war. I'm on his side for that. Ugh. But like personal like questions just about like his background, about his upbringing, that don't have to have anything to do with the war. Purely like just his personality, just his interests. What do you like? What do you like doing in your free time when you're not planning a war? You know? I can't tell you. You have to ask me the right question. Oh my god. Why does Violet have to ask him these questions for him to talk to her? He has demonstrated that like Violet is the love of his life and whatever. So why can he not just simply talk to her? Speaking of simply talking to one another, they have no... Oh. Let me calm down. Let me calm down. First and foremost, when I like first started this book, my first note was that I want Violet to demonstrate through her actions that she loves Xaden, because she keeps saying that she loves him, but we don't have any evidence of that. Xaden has proved that he loves her through his actions in Fourth Wing, but especially in Iron Flame. Violet, however, she just like, all she does is talk about how hot Xaden is. And like, we get it. Everyone understands, okay? You could have left it at Fourth Wing. We all know that Xaden is like out of this world, mind-bogglingly hot, okay? We understand. But other than that, I feel like we just didn't see any evidence that she loved him, except for one scene. But it's not entirely her own emotions. Other than that, I can't think of like a single situation where like she demonstrated that she loves him. They don't have a single emotionally intimate moment that doesn't involve sex. Like they don't have a conversation. They have so many communication issues in this book that carry on from Fourth Wing, and I thought now that they're in like proper relationship in this book, they would learn to communicate. Girl, we're in the same place at the end of Iron Flame that we were in the beginning. Nothing has changed. They don't have conversations with each other. They just have sex and like, oh, problem solved. We're not fighting anymore. Except like 6 chapters later, that whole thing that they fought over comes up again and is still an issue. Because, gasp, they didn't have a conversation about it. They didn't sort it out. They didn't communicate. I had an issue with their relationship in this book. In Fourth Wing, couldn't care less. Like, they were just sleeping together. They barely even knew each other. Like, obviously, that's gonna be, like, rife with communication issues. But this, when they, like, officially are together, you need to start to learn to communicate. And it was so frustrating to read. I did not enjoy that part of this book. As you can probably tell from my very angry enthusiasm. Oh my god. Also, the PDA. Can these, oh my god, please have some shame. Please, actually could not, oh, no. I just had a quick break because I had to eat lunch and my phone ran out of storage. So anyway, if the angle is different or anything, that is why. I got cut off. But yeah, basically I really did enjoy this book. I probably would have even rated it higher than Fourth Wing had it not been for Violet and Xaden's mess of a relationship. Ugh. I gave this a 4.25 stars, which is the same rating that I gave Fourth Wing. I think it was a solid second book, and I think I enjoyed the plot better in this book, but Violet and Xaden really annoyed me. Second last book of the month, we have Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. I read the Encyclopedia of Fairies last year, probably around this time, honestly. And I didn't remember a lot of like the details of that book. I remembered the overarching plot and like the ending. So I was like a little bit confused with a few things in the beginning of this book. But honestly, you don't really need to remember what happened in the first book to be able to enjoy this book. Essentially, these books are just like going to little remote towns, researching fairies, watching Emily try her hardest to engage in civil conversation with the locals. Being the antisocial being that she is, she has a hard time. In this book, they also have like 2 tag-along characters that come with them. Emily's niece, who is like her assistant, and then this other guy who's also a professor at the university. I really like this. They're just like the perfect cozy fairy books. She incorporates the more like true to folklore version of fairies where they're like evil menaces, while also making it like a cozy, fun fantasy. I wouldn't say this is no plot, just vibes, but it sort of gives that feeling. Like there's a plot, there's stuff going on, but it's not like high intensity fantasy, like nothing compared to this. Like I'm not sweating concerned for the character's well-being, but it's just still so fun, and like I love reading about fairies. I really enjoy the way Heather Fawcett writes her fairies, and Emily and Wendell are just so cute. They're so adorable. I love Wendell. He's such a drama queen. I love him. Emily, I heavily relate to. She's very antisocial. I love these books. They're just so fun and cozy. I can't keep saying fun and cozy, but like that's what these books are. I have not rated this yet. I don't know. It's in the 4-star range. We'll just say that. But yeah, that is Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands. Last book. I actually can't remember why I wanted to read this book. I feel like I wanted to read a hockey romance, but I just couldn't find any. So then I decided that a football romance was good enough. But I listened to the audiobook of The Cheat Sheet by, I have no idea who wrote this, Sarah Adams. Basically, our main character Bree is in love with her best friend Nathan, who's like the star quarterback of this massive football team. I don't know. They've gone to the Super Bowl once and they won. Whatever. I am not a sports person, although I weirdly enjoy sports romances. Anyway, she's like madly in love with him. They've been best friends since they were like 17. She thinks that he does not feel the same way whatsoever. Doesn't want to make anything weird. She obviously doesn't want to lose his friendship. So she like never ever crosses the boundary of like friends. And then one night she gets a little bit too drunk and she ends up spilling her guts to a reporter. She doesn't say that she like is in love with him, but she just shares a little bit too much information, and obviously the reporter writes a whole article about it and it goes viral, and the entire world now thinks that Bree and her best friend Nathan are meant to be together. Because Nathan's team is in the run-up to the Super Bowl again, his manager is like, actually, can you guys like fake date for a little while, just lead up to the Super Bowl, because like this is gonna be like great publicity for you. So now Bree has to navigate being in a fake relationship with Nathan while also having real feelings for him, while also trying to keep their friendship separate from the fake relationship and separate from her romantic feelings for him. While they're in their fake relationship, Nathan starts blurring the lines a little bit, and Bree is like, whoa man, do you want what are we on the same page? This is dual POV, so we get both Bree and Nathan's narration, and we very quickly find out that Nathan is also in love with Bree. Like, it's not a secret, and it's really not a secret to anyone else. Also, weirdest thing, I pressed play on Spotify on the audiobook and it played like the first few seconds of chapter 1, and then it like jumped to chapter 17, and I didn't realize until I got to like chapter 23. Like, I was confused because none of the characters like got introduced. We were just like smack bang in the middle of the story, and I was like, oh, I guess the author just like jumped to the good part. And I was like, okay, that's a choice. Like, you're kind of skipping the crucial fake dating element, but sure. And then I realized that I had missed the whole first part of the book. So I went back and I listened to it from start to finish, which like it made the timeline a little bit wacky for me, but overall like it didn't really affect my enjoyment of the book. Like, it was just like a perfect little romance. It's just sweet, it's fun. Bree's inner monologue really reminds me of Lorelai from Gilmore Girls, or just like the Gilmore Girls way of writing, that it's like they ramble and they like go on weird bits and whatever. It was a little cringy in spots, but like it's a romance. It's supposed to be. Like I said, it's best friend to lovers, which I love, and then it's also fake dating, which I also love. My only issue was at the beginning. Nathan has a girlfriend, and the way these two act in front of his girlfriend, I was flabbergasted. And Bree literally says that she like supposedly used to try and become friends with his girlfriends, but they all just like hated her. And I was like, no kidding. She has a key to his apartment. She just like comes in whenever she wants. He chooses Bree over all his girlfriends like every single time. Like, they literally have a whole scene. This is like the very beginning of the book, by the way. Bree has come to Nathan's apartment really early in the morning because they go running together. His girlfriend is there. She's just sort of like, what are you doing here? And Bree's like, at this point she's given up being friendly to them or whatever. When Nathan eventually comes out, she ends up like saying like, okay, you have to choose either her or me. And Bree is literally in her head, in her like inner dialogue, is like, I really hope she doesn't make Nathan choose because he's gonna pick me. When the girl says like, okay, her or me, Bree is like, oh, this is embarrassing. Like, she literally turns away. She's like, I'm so sorry for you. Like, But yeah, I was mad on behalf of all of Nathan's ex-girlfriends because that was shocking. But anyway, overall, really cute book. Loved it. It was silly. It was fun. That is all my recent reads over the past 3 months. I have motivation to read again. I've got a few books on my TBR this month. I'm currently reading The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which is the first book in the Mistborn series. This is my first Brando Sando, so high expectations. I'm enjoying it so far. I think I'll be around 100 pages at this point, 100 pages in, and like things are picking up now, so I think we're getting into the story a bit more. I'm liking it so far. I also just borrowed A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes from my library because Sunrise on the Reaping was just announced. I've been procrastinating reading Ballad, but now I have the motivation to read it because we're getting a Hamish book. I need to chill. I also need to pick a book club book for what is this month, for June. I think I know what book I want to pick, but my library doesn't have it. I've requested it, so hopefully they get it in quickly. I had some pretty good reads over the past couple months. Well, I had one good read each for March and April, and then pretty much like all of my books for May were good. I just had issues with some aspects of them. But yeah, that was my recent reads. Thank you for watching this video. Yeah, that's pretty much it for today. I will see you next time. Bye!